As of this recording, I am now trying to finish the 5th chapter. It is processing right now. So, let's see how many chapters we're going to get through in this video. Here we go with chapter 6.
Six. I'm not human, City of the Iron Tower, France, some time ago, time. They needed more time. More time to understand who or what Xana was. And to understand who or what Aelita was. The boys returned to their everyday lives, and to their usual term time activities, lessons, homework, avoiding all the stupid little social cliques. But, at every opportune moment, they would meet in private, discuss the great secret of Aelita and Xana and how they related to Lyoko, the strange virtual world that they were gradually getting to know, and yet which still seemed shrouded in so much shadow. The way Jeremy had attempted to clarify the situation was that Xana was some kind of insane computer virus and that Aelita was his natural antivirus. But that was not enough to explain everything. To tell the truth, it barely explained anything. What were the towers? Why were there so many of them scattered across the 4 sectors? And what of the surge in inexplicable electronic phenomena that seemed to correlate with the reactivation of the supercomputer? Light bulbs that exploded without warning, stereos, and printers that came on by themselves, televisions that emitted spurting blue flashes before burning out as lifeless husks. Was there a connection between these events and Lyoko, or were the 3 of them simply becoming paranoid? Time. They needed more time. And maybe, in the course of time, Jeremy lifted his head from the supercomputer's control console, eyes ringed with black, his attention diverted away from this train of thought. And who is she? He reproachfully asked of Ulrich, indicating towards a girl who was standing next to him. She was slowly taking in the room around her, eyes wide in astonishment. In truth, Jeremy had already recognized the girl, at least in appearance. He knew that her name was Yumi Ishiyama, and that she was 1 academic year ahead of them. His friend glanced downwards and blushed slightly. Well, you see, she followed me here. I found her nosing around downstairs. In the scanner room, the girl finished his sentence for him. Ulrich had the good grace to look embarrassed, while Yumi seemed militant. Jeremy grunted in annoyance. So you've told her everything, right? I've not told her anything at all. And so she happened to just show up here then. Men, exclaimed Yumi. Since when did any of you know how to keep a secret? Come on, I want to have a chance inside this Lyoko place as well. It's dangerous. Do I look like I'm afraid? And it's not really a place for a girl, Jeremy grumbled, feeling exhausted. Yumi indicated towards the computer screens. Oh really? Ulrich told me there was already a girl inside it. Jeremy directed a withering glare at his friend. Well, perhaps I did tell her a little bit, Jeremy, but that poor girl is probably sick of only having 3 little boys for company. Yumi continued. I'm guessing she'd enjoy having another girl around to confide in. Give her a chance, Jeremy, intervened Ulrich. She's more than just a girl. Yumi's as good a martial artist as any guy I've seen. Put it this way, if I'm a samurai, then she's worth 2 of me. Yumi shot a glance at him that had the intensity of a lightning bolt. But Jeremy was no longer paying attention. Instead, he was considering that the sudden appearance of Yumi, rather than an unfortunate accident, could be considered a timely opportunity. Perhaps she was right. Maybe the virtual girl would find it easier to relate to someone of the same gender. Maybe, despite the fact that he and Aelita were becoming wonderfully attuned to the other's moods and needs. Jeremy nodded his assent, if a little brusquely. If you really care about it that much, then you'd better get ready. The scanner closed around Yumi in a tight embrace. Then there was a sudden light, and a gust of hot air that seemed to come from all around her blew her hair skywards. Yumi found herself materializing onto Lyoko wearing a traditional kimono secured with a deep and tight obi sash, knotted at the back into a rigid bow. Her hair was tied up, fixed in place by hairpins. White makeup had been applied to her face in the manner of a geisha, and in her hands were 2 tesson, folding fans with razor-sharp edges. She and Ulrich had appeared in Lyoko's desert sector, flat dunes interrupted here and there by rocky outcrops, an environment so empty and desolate that it left one quite dizzy. But Yumi was dizzy enough already without the help of them. landscape, it was fair to say that she was a little disorientated. "How are you doing?" Ulrich asked sympathetically. "I'm fine, I think. The first time's the hardest when it comes to finding your feet here. But that kimono really works for you, you look amazing." Yumi did not reply. She took a few hesitant steps, feeling a ringing sensation inside of her head. "It's all because this isn't real," she thought to herself. "That's why you feel so lost. It's because you can't feel the atmosphere in which you normally move." Ulrich smiled. "Don't sweat it. Your eyes and body take a while to adjust to Lyoko, but it doesn't last too long." Yumi looked towards a white tower that stood out in the distance. Her mind could not comprehend the purpose of the structure. The dark base of the tower was a mass of thick roots anchored in the ground. From them rose a pure white cylinder, which vanished into the dimensionless sky. "It's beautiful, wouldn't you agree?" queried a voice from beside her. Yumi spun round. It was Aelita. Goodness knows why, but she had expected someone very different. Taller. More developed. But instead the person standing in front of her was a frightened girl. "Beautiful and mysterious," she replied as she turned to regard the tower again. Ulrich took a step away from the two girls. "And we can't enter it?" "Only she can," he said, indicating towards Aelita. Yumi nodded. "Ulrich told me that you're like the guardian of all this." "In a certain sense, yes. And he also said that there are monsters out to get you." "They'll be out to get you too, if you're with me." "Why?" "I'm not really sure. And I don't know the purpose of the towers." Aelita never got a chance to finish her sentence. The whole horizon suddenly shook with a strong vibration, a kind of digital earthquake, leaving the three children staggering to stay on their feet. 1 second later the tower, beforehand perfectly white, shot off an azure flash, and then began to emanate a disturbing blood-red fog. Like 1,000 nails scraping against the surface of a giant chalkboard, a shrill and acute song began to resonate in the air. "Run for it, right now," yelled Jeremy, his voice coming from all around them. "What's going on?" Yumi asked, suddenly frightened. The elf girl grabbed her hand and led her towards the shelter provided by a cleft rock, which they pressed their backs up against. "You'll be safe here," she advised. "If you're lucky, he shouldn't see you." "But what's happening?" "Who shouldn't see me?" "His name is Xana. He's the being that's after me." The tower had begun to flash intermittently. Aelita observed it with a worried expression on her face. "Now he's found me," she added, her voice loaded with tension. "He's calling his monsters too." Once again she was interrupted before she could finish speaking. Out of the sand beside them erupted the skeletal body of a tarantula monster that reared up abruptly, seizing Aelita. Yumi dove and rolled in the sand while Jeremy cried out in fear, "Aelita, no!" But instead of striking the girl, the monster held her up in front of its hairy body. An instant later, it pressed a horrible proboscis against her chest. "No!" Aelita struggled to breathe. The proboscis was crushing her chest, as if trying to pierce straight through her. The eye of Xana tattooed on the spider was close enough to touch. The monster sniffed at her, smelling her. Then, a metallic hiss cleft the air. One of Yumi's Tessin fans came out of nowhere and cut the monster's body in half, emerging from its eye of Xana in a burst of light. The monster dissolved into nothingness and Aelita collapsed onto the sand. Someone offered her a hand to help her up. It was Ulrich. "Sorry for making you wait a moment there," he said with a smile. Over his shoulder, the tower was beginning to vibrate alarmingly. "I must go treat it," she said mechanically. They escorted her up to the roots of the tower, and then Aelita phased through the wall and finally floated up to the master platform. She pressed a hand against the translucent display. It recognized her immediately. Aelita code Lyoko. The symbols scrolling on the walls of the tower began to fall. Once again, X.A.N.A.'s presence was swallowed up and sucked away. Cancelled. Banished. "Does he attack us, through the towers?" Yumi had asked, while they waited outside. The desert sector's winds were sweeping the sand in every direction. "Something like that," replied Ulrich. "And he wants Aelita. So he'll be back." "He always comes back," whispered the elfin girl, exiting through the white walls of the tower. She staggered towards them and fell against Yumi, exhausted. Yumi supported her and caressed her face. "What happened to you? You look so tired." "It passes eventually. I endure it until then." Yumi looked towards Ulrich, concerned. "Can't we get her out of here?" We're not sure how. Jeremy. Ulrich's right. When you're in Lyoko you have a certain number of life points at your disposal. Every attack the monsters land on you is deducted from your total. Bit by bit your life points are reduced to 0, and when that happens, you're removed from the game. But for her it's different. At those words, Aelita lifted her gaze. There were tears in her eyes. Yes, for me it's different. I am different. You guys are only playing in this virtual reality, but I live on Lyoko, this is my reality. Aelita, no, I'm not a human being. I'm just a computer program, a piece of software. But you're wrong. Jeremy vigorously shook his head. X.A.N.A is a computer program. You're not. You are nothing like him. I am exactly like him. But you're trembling, said Yumi, holding onto her tightly, like a big sister. Aelita looked up at her. You're trembling because you're afraid, continued Yumi, smiling. And from what little I know, computer programs don't feel fear. Imprisoned in the digital universe of Lyoko, Aelita never needed to sleep, eat, or drink. And she did not age. Jeremy however was suffering from a perennial headache that had denied him even a moment's peace for several days. He now spent all of his time before the computer, planning, analyzing, and struggling to comprehend. But, most of all, he was speaking with Aelita. Right, Aelita, he whispered into the camera from the darkened confines of his bedroom. Now stand up and concentrate. What time is it there? Jeremy checked his laptop's internal clock, it was 3:30 in the morning. Not particularly late, he lied. He had locked himself in his bedroom at the school for, he was no longer sure how long. From here he was accessing the factory's computer via a remote uplink. For a computer whiz kid of his caliber, setting up the connection was a simple task. Ever since the day that Yumi had entered into their little circle of friends, Jeremy had fortified himself in his bedroom. He was barely even leaving for meals. Odd and Ulrich had taken to bringing food up from the cafeteria for him. They had urged him to get some rest, but he had ignored them. Let's give it another try. Jeremy, I'm not sure if I want to. We have to, Aelita. There's no other way. If you say so. But you're making a mistake. I'm certain I'm not. Jeremy watched her on his monitor as she crossed to the center of the bright concentric circles inscribed on the floor of Tower 3. Then he crossed his fingers and set the program in motion. It was an algorithm designed to compare the digital data of Aelita on Lyoko to that memorized in the control console under the old factory. Anyone who entered Lyoko was broken down into virtual data and saved in the supercomputer's memory. This data was essential for the person to make the return journey. But, for some reason, Aelita's data would not synchronize. Inside Tower 3, Aelita was lifted up into the air, her head tipped back and her arms outstretched to the sides. Then she gradually became transparent until only a wire frame, a three-dimensional sketch of her, remained. The girl could no longer feel anything. Now Jeremy focused his attention on the computer monitors, where a progress bar was advancing rapidly beside a graphic representation of Aelita. 20%, 30, 40. When 60 was exceeded, he held his breath. The computer reached 90% and then began to slow down. His upper lip was now beaded with sweat. 93, 94. The computer struggled to 99% and then froze up. Synchronization error, but why? Jeremy flew into a sudden rage, smashing his fist against the surface of the table. He tapped at some hotkeys and, inside the tower, Aelita began to return to her normal appearance, finally dropping down to land on the ground. So, how did it go? She asked as soon as she had recovered. We're still not there. Your body can be rematerialized, and that must mean that you entered Lyoko through the factory's scanners at some point, but, for some reason, you can't get back out. You have a problem at the mental level, I think. At the mental level? How is that significant? It means the computer can't match the data saved at your time of entry with what we're now trying to output. Something inside your mind has changed. Maybe it has something to do with my memory loss. Perhaps I have less data now than I did beforehand. Jeremy was observing the numbers that were appearing on his monitor. Or perhaps, it's the other way round, you have an excess compared to before. Aelita looked at him, suddenly curious. Can you send me the data from your computer? I'd like to verify it as well. I think I can do that, yes. In the white tower that served as her shelter, a floating display appeared, and in a few seconds it was populated with numbers. She studied them attentively and eventually spoke. These numbers are like memories. A mountain of memories. Jeremy reflected on this for a moment, and then nodded. Aelita's memory had always been fragile and vulnerable. Till now he had not considered the possibility that this was due to an information overabundance and not vice versa. Funny, isn't it? She added. How so? My mind is full of memories that I don't remember having. As if they didn't belong to you, Jeremy murmured absent-mindedly. Like if someone implanted them in you, from the outside. But who would do something like that? And why? I don't know. Perhaps they're the software that allows me to function in Lyoko. And that outside of here, in the real world, they're useless to me. Perhaps. Or maybe this is what's motivating Xana to hunt you, Jeremy thought to himself. That would suggest he's not out to kill you. Perhaps he wants those memories. He needs them. Jeremy. What is it? Maybe you could successfully extract me if you deleted this junk data, these additional memories. Jeremy sighed, I'm not sure, and it could be quite a painful process. But you can try, right? We'd be running the risk of damaging your memory permanently. But the rest of me would still be alright, correct? What do you want my answer to be? I'd like for you to say yes. This could be very dangerous. Delete them, Jeremy. And what if afterwards we still can't materialize you? What if we find that we deleted all this data to no avail? Then it would mean that you were mistaken. And that I was never, like you. On the day that they attempted to materialize Aelita, Yumi virtualized into Lyoko to be by her side. Odd and Ulrich, however, were waiting for her in the scanner room. They had planned out everything. Odd had informed Principal Delmas that his cousin Aelita would be attending Kadak. Ulrich had falsified the necessary enrollment forms in her name, and finally Jeremy had used his vocal manipulation software to confirm the whole story, telephoning the school posing as Aelita's father. Now Jeremy sat at the keyboard in the control room, his finger hovering over the delete key. Do it, Jeremy. Even though she was trying to appear confident, Aelita was still very tense. Yumi took her hand. Don't worry about it, everything will be fine. Well, except for the fact that you'll have to go to school with the Three Stooges, but what about you? Aelita asked. I'm a grade ahead of you. But we'll still see each other in the cafeteria and the intervals between classes. That sounds wonderful. It will be, just you wait and see. Better than this place anyway. Think about it, no monsters to be fought, no evil computer programs hunting you, Yumi cut off abruptly, looking towards the other girl with concern. Are you alright? What just happened? Aelita had lifted a hand to her forehead. It was nothing, just a flash of pain, in my head. It's done, Jeremy announced. I just deleted it, all of it. Now we'll see if we can bring you back here. Are you ready? Aelita took a deep breath and shut her eyes. Yes. Okay. Then you'd better enter the tower. So, let's do this. The system was armed and ready to go. Jeremy checked one last time that they were ready to begin streaming data. Materialization, he exclaimed at last, stabbing a key. Moments later on Lyoko, Aelita rose into the air, slowly decompiled and began to disappear into nothing. 5%. Now we cross our fingers, and hope that this works, guys, Jeremy whispered, unable to hold back the rising tension. Meanwhile the computer kept on processing, working to match every fragment of virtual Aelita with its corresponding part of flesh and blood Aelita, as she had been when the scanners had committed her physical body to memory. 30%. 40. 60. 80. When they reached 90%, once again the computer started slowing down. Responding to the emergency, Jeremy launched the program that he had spent all those long nights preparing. Activate memory masking program. 98. 99. The screen lit up red. 99.99. 100. Jeremy let himself collapse back against the seat's backrest. It had worked. Down below, in the scanner room, the sliding door of one of the columns slid open and a girl staggered out. She had red, rather than pink hair, and while her ears had a sweeping curve to them, they were hardly elfin. Her clothes were unfashionably outdated. Aelita? Odd asked in an uncertain tone. The girl leaned against a wall to support herself. Confused, she looked around her and her eyes locked onto her own hands. She opened and closed them several times and stared incredulously at her palms. Then, Finally, she lifted her head and saw Odd and Ulrich, who were wordlessly staring at her. "Guys, is that you? You're different to what I imagined. What, did you think I had the tail here as well?" Odd joked. "Well, if you're expecting me to start purring while rubbing up against your ankles, you're way wrong." There was a moment's silence. Then the three of them began to laugh uproariously, until Ulrich, striving to maintain a serious demeanor, announced in a solemn tone, "Aelita, welcome to reality. Is everything okay?" Jeremy asked over the loudspeakers. "It all went smooth as oil, so we'll bring her up now." "Great. I just have to materialize Yumi as well." Jeremy's voice was serious and professional, but it was obvious that his attitude was only skin deep. When the door to the control room began to open, Jeremy rose from the command chair with a start, and watched them from a distance with his hands folded behind his back and a nervous smile on his face. Odd and Ulrich entered flanking Aelita like a pair of bodyguards. Jeremy removed his glasses and cleaned them with the hem of his t-shirt, much too embarrassed to look directly at them. "Come on man, aren't you going to give her a hug?" exhorted Ulrich. Well, you see, but Aelita had already leapt ahead, running to embrace him, and seconds later was stuck like glue to her personal savior. 7 John F. Bullenberg, Gulf of Mexico, January 9th, the motorcycle, a turbocharged Suzuki Hayabusa capable of speeds of over 300 km an hour, screeched around in front of the hangar and braked sharply, leaving a long, black strip on the asphalt. Its reckless rider was a young man of some 23 years of age who was wearing a pair of torn jeans, a black leather jacket and a small rucksack. He kicked down the bike's stand with a foot and pulled off his helmet. "Hola, Fernando," he called out to a mechanic in blue overalls who was exiting the hangar, tossing the Suzuki's keys to him. "John, you're leaving us again," the mechanic, speaking in drawling Spanish, seized the keys in mid-flight. "Yeah, the holidays are over unfortunately. Can you park the bike for me? I've held them up enough as it is." "No problem." The private jet was a Gulfstream G550 worth almost $60 million. Over its clear blue livery was picked out the multicolored logo of Musico, the great online music portal. John F. Bullenberg directed himself up the gangway staircase, to the open cabin hatch where a beautiful flight stewardess was waiting for him. "Welcome aboard, Mr. Bullenberg. Call me John, we're the same age after all." The girl's perfume smelt of flowers. "Actually, I'm a year older than you, Mr. John," she replied, blushing. John smiled. Entering, he turned to face the cockpit. Tony and Matt were waiting for him, mugs of coffee in hand. On the lapels of their shirt each wore a pin carrying the Musico logo, which also looked good on the uniform of the stewardess. "Hey guys. We're ready to depart," Tony said. "Do you want to take the controls for takeoff? This sleepy old man beside me needs someone to relieve him." "Hey," teased Matt. "You're the old man who needs a nap." John had recently obtained his private pilot license, and both Tony and Matt knew how much he loved to pilot the jet. But this time the boy shook his head. "Sorry guys, perhaps the landing. But I've got to focus on work right now." The passenger cabin was an elegant lounge furnished in mahogany and clear white leather. John made himself comfortable in the nearest seat and pulled a laptop computer out of his rucksack. "Would you like anything to drink?" the hostess inquired. John had never seen her before. She had to be new. "No, thank you." Until the age of 21, John F. Bullenberg had been a boy no different to anyone else, a penniless student of the University of California, in constant arrears with his rent and examinations. Then, one day, an idea had struck him for a computer program that could put music lovers across the world in contact with one another. He had programmed the first version of Musico late at night, after finishing his shifts at the fast food outlet where he worked. Since then his life had taken a turn in the complete opposite direction: fast motorcycles, private jets, villas all over the world. Right now he was about to depart Costa Rica, where he had invited a few friends to spend Christmas with him, heading home to California. John F. Bullenberg was living the gilded dream. "Takeoff will be in 5 minutes, Tony announced over the loudspeakers. "Meanwhile, there's a call for you from Margie." Margie was John's personal assistant. He had also hoped she would be his fiancée, but up to this point his attempts on her had been unsuccessful. She had also refused his invitation to join him for Christmas. The young man picked up the telephone receiver built into his armrest. "Hello. Have you taken off yet?" "We're still on the ground. Is there a problem?" Margie was a petite girl with black eyes, extremely beautiful and always smiling. Now though her voice was serious and worried. Listen, John. It looks like Musico has been infected with a virus. This was not a rarity. Last year there had been over 100 attacks and John had a team of programmers on hand responsible for dealing with them. But this time Margie had decided to skip that stage and bring the issue straight to his door. That meant it was time to start worrying. Is it serious? Right now it's only infected a few computers. But that's not the problem. It's just, I've never seen anything like this virus. Only 10 computers? Musico's online community encapsulated almost 500 million members. Why was Margie disturbing him for something this trivial? Have you done any projections? What's the rate of infection on this thing? Put it this way, do you remember the information meltdown people expected the Millennium Bug to cause? We're talking that bad, or worse, except unlike Y2K, this would be real. John was having trouble believing his own ears. He considered the possibility that Margie was pulling his leg or exaggerating things. But Margie did not make jokes. He could not imagine her pulling one over on him at this level. Okay. Email me a report and I'll go over it now. Have you called Francis about this? I can't get through to him, he's still on vacation. I was hoping you had a way to contact him. Yeah, I do. I'll wait for your report. I missed you, John added hurriedly. Then he ended the call. Through the G550's windows he could see that they were rolling back from the hangar, the aircraft maneuvering towards the runway. By the time Margie's email arrived they were in flight. The message consisted of just 2 lines. Here. Solve this quickly, the first line said. The second was a link to the Musico website. John clicked on it and on the screen of his laptop an image appeared. 2 concentric circles, with 3 bars arranged at the bottom and 1 at the top, like the target on a shooting range. Or maybe, an eye, he thought. Sir, I've prepared you an iced tea, the stewardess said. John did not reply. He opened the debugging application that allowed him to troubleshoot Musico's software. He analyzed the website's source code, which everything else ran on top of, and made some modifications to it. Right, let's see if it works now, he said through gritted teeth. He tapped the enter key. For several seconds he waited. Then, his mouth fell open as the coding he had labored long and hard to program began to move, to fluctuate, the letters and numbers spinning across the screen in a vortex of symbols. They were compositing into an image. The same image. 2 concentric circles. 4 little bars. That strange eye again. John cursed, beating his fist against the soft white leather of the armrest. He tried to exit from the debug application, but found himself locked in. Is everything all right, sir? Asked the considerate stewardess. John sighed. No, actually. Nothing's right at all. From a jacket pocket he extracted his phone and used it to shoot a pair of photos of the image on his screen. He then forwarded them in an MMS to his friend Francis. Figure this crap out for me. Then he switched off his laptop. And swore again. John's MMS was bounced by his telephone through a bridge repeater, and then to another, and then through yet another. During this process a small digital fragment inserted into the message suddenly changed course. It was only a short code string, nameless and amnesic, but in a certain sense it was alive. The program managed to penetrate the telephone company's central server network and from there it spread its net, calling for its many scattered, nameless fragments. They were waiting for it. It was like a magnet attracting tiny metal filings to itself, and in so doing becoming stronger and stronger. His digital cells were slipping back into place, resuming their function. They focused their efforts on trying to crack into the treasure vault, trying to access his locked-away memories. I have not died, the being thought, still hunting for further fragments of himself. One of the telephone company's servers spooled up to full speed as the digital entity traveled along the telecommunication lines. I have not died. Oh yes, my memories. I am coming back for you. Several seconds later, in a remote house somewhere in Maine, a phone belonging to a programmer named Francis began to ring. The man picked up the telephone and read the newly received message. Figure this crap out for me. There were 2 attached messages, both showed the homepage of Musico, something he had seen millions of times before. Thinking it could be a trick, he messaged back, this crap happens to be the most beautiful website in the world. Almost immediately the phone began to ring. Francis? Are you trying to be funny? What do you mean? I just sent you 2 pictures of that strange virus. That kind of, with the 2 circles and, John, can you please explain this rubbish you're spouting? There's no virus in the 2 pictures you sent me. As a matter of fact, there's nothing in them, apart from Musicoa's homepage. John had to ask Francis to message the pictures back to him before he was ready to believe him. True enough, the site had resumed normal operation. The virus had disappeared, leaving no traces. As if it had never existed.
What the heck? No, what is this now? What? Poor Aelita? What the heck? What are these images? That Mr. Puck? Anyway. Yeah. A little bit of Cold Earth from season 1. And yeah, pretty much. And like Cold Earth, and then sprinkled in with the completely original story instead of trying to regain memories. This is so weird. This is so freaking weird. This is like so freaking weird. But that's why I love Code Lyoko. I love Code Lyoko. It's just full of such mystery. But anyway, hope you guys enjoyed this. Chapter 6 and 7. We'll do 8 and 9 another time. So, these will be the 2 only Lyoko videos that I'll be doing for today. I hope you enjoy them. Where was that tape? For Aelita. Wonder what that's about.